if my parents have an adverse thought or reaction, it's not actually to me. It's based on the life that they've previously seen, and they're reacting from themselves. Welcome to the enJENeer podcast. That's enJENeer with a Jen, because I'm your podcast host, Jen. This is your space to integrate your soul with your STEM career. The purpose of this platform is to teach stressed STEMs how to have self-care, explain all the ways that STEM is spiritual, interview those who switched from STEM to a more soul-centered career field, and to document my decision in becoming a soul purpose life coach. Now follow me out of the fog and into your future. Let's listen in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the enJENeer podcast. Today's episode is all about how I told my parents that I quit my engineering job. So once I disclosed that I quit my engineering job on my platforms, the top question that was coming through from you, the audience members, the listeners, the followers, was, Jen, how did you tell your parents? So my audience knows that I am a first generation Mexican American, first generation in my family to go to college, first in my family to become an engineer. And I feel like I have attracted a very similar audience with similar life attributes, with similar life circumstances. And so they see a lot of themselves in me. And I know that when they ask me this question, it's because that's the question they have for themselves. How in the world would I tell my parents if I want to do what Jen is doing? What would I tell them? How would I do it? Because I kind of want to. That's what I hear when I know people are asking me that question. And when I did disclose to my audience my decision to leave engineering at this moment in my life, it was so beautiful how many people reached out to connect with me. And I know that they are connecting with me because I'm inviting in those connections. Now that I have become a certified soul purpose life coach, I am constantly inviting people in to my coaching containers, and I want to do that right now. So if you feel this connection with me, if you resonate with my story, if you resonate with my personality, if you see yourself within me and you want me to support you while you go through similar transitions, while you want to anchor into a higher level of self-care, while you want to be held in this idea of dreaming big and living big and anchoring into your gifts, your innate intuition, your clarity and fulfillment with your life in a spiritual way, which still includes the masculine and the practical, because you are a person in STEM. I am it for you. And I know that I personally could not have come to this place in my life without the support from a one-on-one coach. And that's why I have such a deep connection to one-on-one containers, and why that's the only thing I'm offering right now. I'm only offering one-on-one containers because I know how transformative and how healing they can be. And that's the type of healing that I want to offer back to you. And so I do have 3 ways that you can work with me at this moment in time, which are all one-on-one. The first 2 are free. So there should be no hesitation. Just accept the invite now. You can either screenshot me or email me a 5-star review or positive review of the enJENeer podcast and get a free session from me. Or you can ask for 1 free session in exchange for a testimonial. So you would just have to provide a testimonial that I can publish onto my platforms and onto my website. Or 3, and this is where the real transformation happens, I am offering a paid version of my coaching containers, which are 3 to 6 months commitment, where you can either get that self-care accountability or that soul purpose connection. And all the details are in the show notes below. So go ahead and check those out if you feel called to work with a coach. So I do want to jump into the episode regarding my parents. And I actually want to start it off with a post that my personal coach posted onto her platform. So I'm going to now quote her post. As a 1.5 gen immigrant from Taiwan, all I've ever wanted growing up was to make my parents proud. The sacrifices and effort they've made for their children, I remember them all. And this desire to make them proud is a self imposed responsibility. Looking back, it was honestly a lot of pressure for a child to bear. So, to all my friends who are immigrants or children of immigrants, I see you. And yet, I also realized this. During the years when I desperately wanted to make my parents proud of me, was also the period when I neglected myself the most. Because deep down, I didn't believe I was truly fully competent. I needed my parents' validation or approval of me in order to feel like I'm doing something meaningful and worthwhile in my life. Whenever they have opinions about my life that's different from my own, I'd get annoyed, defensive, and try to get them to view things from my point of view, only to feel guilty and mad at myself afterwards for fighting with them. Because the reason I was fighting back was because deep down I needed them to tell me I'm doing something right, that they're proud of me for the things I've done so that I can finally be at peace with myself and perhaps start to believe more in myself too. As a result, my attachment to their opinions of me stopped me from truly having a genuine, unattached, deeply connected relationship with them. So if you're feeling this way with your parents or loved ones right now, you have to take that power back and do the work on being proud of yourself and the things that you've accomplished first. Wanting or waiting and seeking validation from your parents is not serving you or your relationship together. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't want them to be proud of you, because don't we all as children? But once I truly let go of that attachment and decide to have my own back and truly be proud of myself first, whatever they said didn't really have the same emotional charge anymore. They're adults too with their own agency. They also get to have their opinions and express how they feel about things too. And obviously, now I still get annoyed once in a while because I'm human, but my relationship with my parents has honestly shifted 180 degrees when I finally let go of my need to seek their approval. Of course, I'll always be delighted if my parents do tell me directly that they're proud of me and what I've done, but even if they don't, I know that I'll still be okay. And I would just say, I mean, she is my coach, right? That's pretty much the process that I took myself through as I was making, or that she really helped support me through and guide me through while I came to this conclusion. I had known, if you listen to the episode where I say I finally quit engineering, you know that I had had this desire in my heart, in my body, in my intuition, in my gut for so long, but I didn't have the confidence to listen to it. And I realize now that a lot of the limiting thoughts that prevented me from actually following through on that choice were not ever my own. Like, once you walk through the doors of your limiting thoughts, you realize that none of them were yours. And I do think that a lot of the fears that I had were fears from my upbringing, fears that were taught to me by professors, by teachers, by society, by my parents. But and it's no fault of their own. Like, these are genuine, valid fears that they have gone through. And so they're teaching from their level of knowledge, from their level of wisdom, from their level of experience. But, and this is the analogy that I really, really loved, the picture that comes through, the symbol that comes through is every generation is standing on the shoulders of the generation before them. So if you picture yourself standing on your parents' shoulders, yes, you only have the opportunity to go after fulfillment, to go after, you know, life purpose and wellness because of the foundations and the sacrifices and the love that they provided. But the vision of you going after something better than what they've seen, they literally cannot fathom. They can't see it. You are standing on their shoulders. The view of the world that you have, the view of yourself that you have, the perspective and the philosophy and the ideology that you have, they cannot see. They did not grow up with the same society. They did not grow up with the same opportunities. They will not fully understand. And you have to detach from this neediness, this desperation to get them to see it in order for you to live authentically. And one of the ways that my coach really took me through detaching from what my parents' emotions or reactions was going to be was thought work. And I know I've talked about this in many different moments. You can also check out my Unblock Balance Beliefs workshop, where I really go into how thought work impacts every moment and every aspect of your life. And basically, she really helped me see the power of my own thoughts over the reality that I experience. So, what was I making leaving engineering mean about myself? Like, whenever you're in a state of stress, whenever you're in a state of worry, whenever you're in a state of indecision, any state that you're in is always coming first from how you're thinking towards that circumstance. And so if I look at leaving engineering as in making it mean that I'm being a bad daughter, making it mean that I'm a failure, making it mean that, making it, I'm the one making it mean these specific aspects. But what if it means none of that? What if it means this is just me being my authentic self? What if this means that I'm just following my intuition? What if this means really beautiful things? If my parents have an adverse thought or reaction, it's not actually to me, it's based on the life that they've previously seen, and they're reacting from themselves, not because of anything I did, but because they have the autonomy to choose the meanings that they project onto a circumstance, just like I have the autonomy to attach the meanings that I project onto my circumstances. So I really got to this place where any circumstance is what it is, and I can think about it whatever benefits me, to think about it, the perspective that I have on it. And it takes a lot of intention to really change your neural pathways to be something that isn't as automatic, isn't as habitual, and is just this new form of thinking. And that's where coaching really came into play, to create these new neural pathways of how I could see myself, how I could see my environment, how I could see my parents. And one of the things that my coach really showed me was, there is your business where you attach your meanings to your circumstance. There is other people's business where they attach their meanings to their circumstance. And then there's God's business, like natural disasters, things that is out of everybody's control. And you suffer when you're no longer inside your business and you're trying to change and manipulate other people's business, or you're trying to change and manipulate God's business. And that is when you suffer. And so I had really learned to let my parents be exactly as they are. I completely threw out the rule book saying that my parents need to be a certain way before I could act a certain way, or that my parents need to have these thoughts about me in order for me to be a good person, or that my parents need to just basically, I detached any form of expectation, any form of rule towards my parents, so that I could just be myself and they get to be themselves. And even if they come through with anger or disappointment or fear, they have the right to feel that. They have thoughts that are valid, that are coming from their life experience, that is putting them in that state. It may not be intentional, but I recognize that it really does come from the self. I'm not causing any of that for them. They are really in that state themselves. And can I just sit and accept and be okay with the discomfort of any emotion that they may go through, is really the process that I had to take myself through. So, really releasing this attachment that I need them to be any different, or that I need to help fix them if they feel something negative towards me. It's like, in this space, am I willing to experience the discomfort if it means that I get to finally shift towards a more authentic form of embodiment of myself? And it's really just a pros and cons of consequences. Like, am I okay staying in engineering with the consequence that I, you know, don't disrupt my family system, that, I don't disrupt my engineering team, but I'm letting myself down? Am I okay with that consequence? For a while, that was the consequence that I kept choosing over and over and over and over and over again. That was the consequence that I was most okay with, because I couldn't handle if my parents were upset with me. I couldn't handle the idea if they thought I was being disrespectful, or if they thought I was being ungrateful, or if they thought I was being unappreciative, or if they thought I was being neglectful, or like the the idea of how they could think of me really did prevent me from going that direction, until I had a coach in my space that could really help me release this codependency on, like, my emotions being attached to what their emotions were of me, my emotions being attached to what they were making me mean about them. Like, it's really how your brain perceives the situation. So notice that I wasn't waiting for them to feel okay about my decision. I wasn't waiting for them to act or be a certain way in order for me to come to this conclusion. It was more like, can I trust myself? Can I love myself? Can I make sure that I go through this without making it mean I'm a failure, without making it mean that I'm a bad daughter, without making it mean that I'm unappreciative, without making it mean these horrible things? How can I go through this decision being my best friend, making it mean that I'm listening to myself, making it mean that I get to trust who I am, making it mean much more authentic forms of self, so that if someone disagrees with it, I know that it's just their perspective of life or their perspective of the circumstance, and that's not necessarily the truth. It's just their truth. And I really like this analogy of, like, let's say you go to a movie, right? You go to the movie and you absolutely love it, given what you've gone through, given through your life experiences. Like, you could really understand the character and you could see how everything connected and you just absolutely loved it. And then someone else goes to that movie and they just hated it. They were like, ew, it was cheesy and it was this and it was that. And they absolutely hated the movie. That doesn't make the movie good or bad, because look, one person loved it and the other didn't. It really shows you that someone's reaction to a circumstance never has to do with the circumstance itself. Someone's reaction to the movie never has to do with the movie itself. It has to do with their life experiences. It has to do with what they've gone through in life. It has to do with their value system. It has to do with what they believe is true and what they believe is not true. And so that's really the way that I navigated this situation. It was like, I'm being a circumstance for my parents, and any thought they have towards it, any opinion they have towards it, any emotion they have towards it, they get to have the space to have that thought and that emotion. But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. So I really approached it from that state of mind. But at the same time, I know myself, and I know that I could not come to the conclusion of finally leaving engineering if my parents did have a very adverse reaction while I was going towards that direction. So to almost protect myself from myself, I chose not to let them into any of what I was going through until I came to a conclusion and until that conclusion was finalized, in order to then disclose it to them. So I wasn't telling them from the beginning, hey, I'm thinking about leaving and these are my thoughts and I'm going to try it and I'm going to go through X, Y, and Z, because I knew that I would be influenced by anything that they thought and said. So while I was really anchoring in this new form of relationship with them, I couldn't yet hold that space for them where it didn't affect me. I knew that it would affect me. So, in order to protect myself from myself, I made sure that I navigated all the indecision, all the fears, all the, back and forth about this decision without their thoughts in my mind. But if I really think about it, all the thoughts that prevented me from going through with it were the internalized programs of how they parented me and how society taught me to think and how professors taught me to think, because my most authentic self chose leaving. So yeah, the entire time that I was really navigating this decision, I did not let them into what I was going through. I was just living my day to day. And I mean, that doesn't mean that they didn't know I was dissatisfied. They definitely knew, especially going through college, going through the everything that I went through and that I've talked about with my engineering journey. Like, they could see it, you know. But when I was in my engineering position full time, they just saw me going to work every day and then falling asleep once I got home or once I finished my work day. I don't think they really were tuned into the fact that I was already to the point that I was considering quitting my job. And so the only person that knew that I was going towards this direction of quitting was my life coach. And what I mean by going towards this direction is, like, I had been living in indecision for so long until I finally came to the choice. It's like, you know what? No, I want to do whatever internal work I need to in order to get myself to the place where I get to leave engineering. And when I had finally decided that that was the direction I was going to go, I told absolutely no one but my coach because I like it finally had gotten to this place where I could decide that. And I knew that it was so fragile that it could be swayed to go back into the indecision or back into like, no, you have to stay in engineering so easily. Like I had never even gotten to the place where I could decide that. So the fact that I got here, like I really, really cherished it. And I wanted nothing to sway me away from that choice. And I knew that if I told my parents, hey, I'm thinking about quitting, they would have asked a bunch of reasons why. They would have wanted to discuss it with me. I just would have been very easily influenced by any fear, any thought, any opinion that they had towards it. And then I would have second guessed it and then stayed. And I just really wanted to protect myself from that. So I did not let them know that this was the direction I had decided on. And I go through all the processes of, putting in my notice, finishing all of, my projects so that they could be handed off to other teammates, having coffee and like really closing out my engineering position. And I had really, really, really wanted to tell my parents my final week of being an engineer. I had wanted to tell them like that my last week, like I wanted to tell them like on Monday, like, hey guys, I want to let you know I quit and this is my last week. But I totally did not realize that my last week was going to be the week that my dad's parents were in town and that my sister from New York was going to be in town. And I just had this desire to have that moment with my parents privately and no one else around. But that week, like, there was always somebody in my house. My grandparents, my sisters, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and I didn't feel like I could really have the moment that I was hoping for with them. And they actually all left to Vegas towards the end of the week. And they asked me to come with them because my engineering position, I did have the flexibility to work remote as long as I planned ahead of time. And there were times where I did work remote. And so my dad was like, hey, we're all going to go to Vegas together. Like, why don't you work remote? Your sister's going to be doing that. And I had to tell them like, oh, sorry, like I have project site visits that I have to go to in person, so I'm not going to be able to work remote. And it took everything out of me to like not be able to tell them in that moment in time, but it just there were other people around and I didn't want to have, a pretty serious conversation around other people. And I know that that would also change the way that I disclose the information to them. I really wanted it to be this private moment. So I finished my engineering position with nobody home. They had all gone to Vegas. They had all gone to Vegas. I finished my engineering position here alone. And then I go through the weekend and Monday. So, Monday, the first Monday that I didn't have work, but nobody knew that. And then Tuesday, my parents came back from Vegas and they show up, and I tell them that I can help them with their bags. And I take them to we have like a patio backyard, and we go to the backyard, and my mom's like, Jen, you've already been helping us for quite a while. Like, I don't want to keep you from your work. Do you want to go back to work? I think it's been like 30 minutes or something. And that was my window to be like, well, I actually have some news that I want to share with you guys. And I think the way that I disclosed it to my parents was, hey guys, I know that there are going to be moments in life where I make a decision independently as an adult, and then I reveal it to you and disclose it to you. And I know I haven't really conducted myself that way in the past, and this may be new for you. It may be different for me to conduct myself this way. And so I want to hold space for any reaction you may have to this new form of our relationship. And I want to let you know that I have made the decision to leave my engineering job, and my last day was actually this past Friday. My dad was just kind of like scrolling on his phone as he's listening to me talk. But as soon as I finished that last sentence, he just looked up at me and I was like, oh my God, what is his reaction going to be? He was just kind of quiet. And then my mom got really emotional because she knows that I have had this desire to leave engineering, that I've been really unhappy with it for so long, that I haven't really liked who I've been while I've been in the engineering environment. And she just knows that it was probably really difficult for me to come to this choice and decision. And so she got really emotional. And then I asked her why she was emotional. And her words were like, I'm really, in a weird way, like proud of you because I know that this couldn't have been easy. And like, it's just a proud moment. And then my dad goes, no, it's not. Oh my gosh. And I think that would have like broke me before. But given the work that I had gone through with my coach, I could really detach from any form of reaction that he was having because I knew that it was stemming from what he values and what he thinks is correct in the world and what he like has gone through and what he thinks success looks like. And so if he's not proud of it, he gets to have that thought and he gets to have that opinion. But as I revealed to him, my thoughts and my plan and my certification and how I started working with people and the vision that I have for myself and what I want to aim to do, he respected it. And at the end of the day, he did give me a hug and he was like, he has valid concerns, but I also have a valid vision. And it ended up fine. Everything was okay. It's exactly like what my coach said. Of course, I'll always be delighted if my parents do tell me directly that they're proud of me and what I've done, but even if they don't, I know that I'll still be okay. And I think at the root of it, that's exactly where I'm at. Whether they see it or they don't, I know that I'm still okay. That's that's pretty much it. That's the story. That's the way that I navigated this. And like I said, if you want someone to really hold that space for you that's going to understand you, that's just that you don't really have to explain much to. If you're also in this same similar position, like I get it, I see you, I understand you, and I just invite you to continue being in this space with me where you can also get to that same place, whether that's listening to my podcast episodes, following me on Instagram, getting in a coaching container with me, or being on my email list. Like in any way, shape, or form, I would love to make sure that you feel connected. And I am sharing this story specifically for you. So thank you. Feel free to share this to anybody else that you think can resonate with it, can benefit from it. And of course, rate and review the enJENeer podcast. That really puts the podcast at the forefront for other people to see it and find it and connect with it. And if you do that, you also get a free session with me. So it's just win-win for everybody. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close out. So thanks. Bye. And so it is. Thank you for tuning in to the enJENeer podcast with Jen Reynoso. I hope you're leaving here feeling a lot more aligned to take inspired action. Now be sure that you stay connected and never miss the exact episode that was meant for you by subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen to it, as well as subscribing to the enJENeer email list. Go to www.enJENeerpodcast.com. That's enJENeer with a Jen, and you know exactly why. I hope to hear from you soon, STEMmy. Bye for now.